have we been achieving much as far as competitiveness? Now, that is a different story altogether, because the Global Competitiveness Index reports for Trinidad and Tobago over the past few years have indicated that there is much to be desired in terms of this country's productivity level. The government has signaled plans following the last budget presentation to really address productivity concerns. Christmas into the new year and then into Carnival only exacerbates the situation, as workplaces usually experience a high level of absenteeism or lateism. Can't find your workers on time at all at this time of the year. What can employees do to help improve the country's productivity rate? Are they tyrants in their own right? Are they only expecting to draw blood from stone when it comes to how they treat their workers? Well, we're going to be joined on set by two representatives of the Employers Consultative Association. Keston Nanku, he's the chairman of the ECA with us. A very good morning to you, Keston. Good to have you with us. Good to have you on the show. All the best to you as well. Farzan Ali is the vice chairman. Assalamu alaikum, Farzan. Good to have you with us on the show. We were supposed to be joined by Stephanie Fingal, who is the CEO, interim CEO of the ECA, but she's down with the flu. Like I've been battling with the flu, like Keston has been battling with the flu. Tis the season in that respect, so she's not able to join us. But good morning, gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us.
To all your listeners.
Mr. Nanku, from the outset, from the ECA's point of view, how, given the fact that we've already heard from central bank numbers talking about a 27% increase in retrenchment from January to October of 2019, what does that indicate heading into 2020 from a business point of view?
Well, Fazir, I would like to think that you will continue to see retrenchment exercises taking place. And for a number of reasons. The global economic environment and the relative impact, not to mention what is taking place between China and the US. And as it is said, when these big giants,
when they sneeze,
we catch the cold. So I think we will continue to see that. And we cannot get away from the fact, Fazir, that the world of work has changed. And we're talking now about the introduction of automation, various forms of artificial intelligence. It has not come at the rate at which it currently exists in the global environment, but to come it will.
Do we want it to come to the extent that it will?
Yeah, because
then businesses will be accused of laying off more people.
Well, the thing about it is some balance. When we talk about the relative impact of the introduction of automation, keep in mind it's really about what may be described as the loss of jobs in a particular sector, or skills and skill sets and all the rest of it. But the creation, you know, some writers have indicated that there will be quite a lot more jobs being created. But now, to answer your question specifically, in terms of if we wanted to come here as quickly as it has taken place, the answer is no, because I can tell you, when I look at it, governments, particularly third world developing countries, it's difficult for them to keep a pace of creating jobs, and the whole question of the educational system, the curriculum, the preparation of students to be able to prepare themselves appropriately or adequately for the world of work.
And that speaks to a bigger issue, Mr. Ali, as far as our education system, correctly, whether we're training our young people for the skills, with the skills that will be relevant in our time and for years to come. But just on the point of employers, because you all are representatives of the Employers Consultative Association, the accusation laid at the feet of the business sector, the employers, is that they're quick to fire. They're looking for every reason, every excuse, every way just to fire, rather than thinking in terms of redeployment, working out ways and systems and structures. In fact, the business community, some have often complained about the industrial court and the way it works and so on. What is your response, Mr. Ali, to the suggestion that the business community in Trinidad and Tobago, of course there are exceptions, but in general are too quick to fire?
Okay, Fazir, good morning, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Just to take from a bit of what Keston was saying a while ago to answer your question. business is now operating in an environment which is heartless, which is so competitive that to stay alive, you have to do many things. However, I will not agree with that statement that business is heartless to the fact that the first thing it's going to do is try to cut staff. No. I could tell you what we do in the ECA is that we do a lot of retraining exercises, reskilling exercises for our members. And that's ongoing. We also sit with our members to show them ways and means we can avoid it. Because business don't like retrenchment. There are two reasons. One, it's an expensive, right, option, very, based on the current formula for retrenchment. The second thing is that it leaves a really bad climate in your organization, something you have to deal with and work with. So it's not a win-win, right, in any way. It's most times it turns out to be a lose-lose. But from the ECA's point of view, it's the last option. That's what our position is.
And Mr. Nanku, from that point of view, how then should Trinidad and Tobago be moving forward in that relationship between employers and employees, as far as creating an environment where there's a greater levels of productivity, greater level of consultation between employees and employees, and a greater willingness for retooling and retraining, if that is seen as the way to move forward?
Well, Fazir, from that perspective, it is more, we do have what is called social dialogue, which from the ECA's perspective, and ably supported and reinforced by the International Labour Organization, social dialogue is the most powerful vehicle, considered to be the most powerful vehicle, to get parties to that conversation together. So it has to be highly collaborative, consensus building. It cannot be, one size fits all and, I don't care about you. It has to do with how can we, recognizing what is in the best interest, whether it be national interest or the whole, for us to work together. Now, we have been having challenges where that is concerned, because a lot of it has to do with the willingness to give up power. And that's not an easy thing to do. But more and more, as I continue to say on these programs and otherwise, the platform is burning. And the time has come for us to collectively come together to treat with a social dialogue that sits at the heart of it, coming out of respect for each other, recognizing that although we come from different places with different ideologies, it is important for us to recognize that we are all in this together.
That sounds idealistic, Mr. Nanku, but the reality is that we are very, very far away from that. I mean, we have this tripartite thing. I mean, you're smiling already because you know where you're going with that. I mean, we are very good at setting things up. So, big fanfare and so on, labor, business, government all come together. What has come from it as far as creating that environment where, yes, there will be tensions, because you're talking about employers and employees, it's natural. But there is no suggestion that the tripartite arrangement is working in any meaningful way.
Well, in responding to that, Fazir, I would not say, yes, it's working in the way it ought to be working, as other countries have demonstrated to us. Barbados, if Barbados did not get in and really live the tripartite approach, they would have been a Venezuela. Yeah?
Really? You think it would have been that bad?
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been.
That's a bit of an exaggeration, Mr. Nanku, because they were in a difficult economic situation. They laid off 3,000 in the public sector and 1,500 shortly after. But to suggest that they'd go the way of Venezuela because of the economic circumstances, isn't that a bit extreme?
Well, okay, let me take that back, Fazir.
Yeah.
Not in the context of people leaving and running away from their homes and whatever it is.
But economic ruin?
Economic challenges, it would have been difficult because it's about, at the time, it was about what do they call it? Reducing the dollar.
Yes, the devaluation.
The devaluation.
Yeah. Devaluation.
And they refused to devalue.
And even up to now.
Yeah, they said devaluation
is that collective. We have seen through Industrial Relations Advisory Committee, at the level of NTAC, continued efforts. But you're quite right. We need much more to propel this forward.
What do we need? Let me ask Mr. Ali to come in on this. What do we need? We have existing structures. We have the National Tripartite Advisory Council. We have the Industrial Court. We have existing legislation. We have all sorts of different things. What should we be doing at this point to move the process forward to the benefit of all concerned?
Fazir, this is where real leadership comes in this country, which we are lacking in. Maybe from all the three main players, from government, from business, and from the trade unions. Because it seems to me, every time one of the parties put forward a position in those tripartite type arrangements, it's shut down either by one or the other, and nobody looks for that middle of the road and that nation-building type solution. You need statesmanship. You need people who really care about the country and about the people in this country. Otherwise, we're not going to go anywhere. Maybe we have to rethink this entire structure. The ILO, for instance, that's perhaps one of the best examples in the world that has fostered this and successfully aided a number of countries in reaching the point. We work very closely with the ILO. And
so why aren't we going in that direction?
Well, we have started this process, the ECA, last year, where we had 2 consultative sessions, which was facilitated by the ILO. Because you see, what we realize, anytime we mount a program, ECA, right, come to this, come to that, you have a lot of frictions because they say, oh, they're just coming to push a business head, they're doing this, they're doing that, the other. And that's why we invited the ILO. You come. You do it instead, because you would be seen as neutral, you would be seen as the global example of tripartitism.
Let's take a break, because we're going to continue this discussion, because we have some time left with our guests, because this whole issue of the relationship between employer, employees, government involvement, and indeed the question of productivity in Trinidad and Tobago. We haven't even touched that as yet, because we really don't need to, because now is not the time of productivity from Christmas into Carnival in that sense. But we're going to be back right after this break to continue our dialogue with our 2 guests.
Yes, we were the first to produce calypso, limbo, and pan. First to produce a pillow. This is why the country suffering.
6:36 in Trinidad and Tobago. I suppose the employers will celebrate that we're hearing the Lord Kitchener talking about too much holidays in Trinidad and Tobago as we head into 2020 proper. We're continuing our dialogue with our 2 representatives from the ECA, the Employers Consultative Association, Keston Nanku, the chairman, and Farzan Ali, the vice chairman. Mr. Ali, we are in an election year. We can't get away from that.
Yes.
There are collective agreements to be settled. We saw one being settled in the courts just before the end of the year, and an award being made for severance for the workers of one institution. What is your own view on that, as we have politicians being what politicians are, and collective agreements to be settled?
Well, Fazir, you know, memories of 2015 comes back, where a number of those agreements was just overnight signed off, and it placed the country in a turmoil because the other government, the succeeding government, had to find ways and means to foot very steep bills, which we're still paying for. And the ECA is hoping that we will have no repeat of that, especially this time around. You can't be saying that we've been doing prudent management for 4 years, to some extent stifling the economy, because this has always been a sort of an argument from business. I mean, look at what you have done with VAT. For $6 billion you owe to most of the members of the ECA and the other business organizations. And you're not paying anything. You take what you call an interest-free loan from the private sector. And then for us to see, you're more or less going to give away to the unions and bow to them just because of elections is going to put this country in a place where it would be most difficult to return to some semblance of a management. So ECA is really strong in it, and we are really advising the government that they have to be very careful in terms of those trade agreements.
And
Yeah,
yes, Mr. Nanku, go
I'm
ahead.
very cautious because, you see, the time has come, Fazil, for us to be talking about that same, whether it be an entire tripartite conversation. We got to get to the place where we have some kind of wage control. And when I say wage control, we cannot be increasing wages, salaries, wages, incentives and rewards, providing that without it being aligned to productivity or aligned to increase in performance targets and so on.
But do we have the indicators? Do we have the measurements, whether at a national level or at an individual business level, to show whether that productivity is where it's at, to therefore justify the case, whatever that case may be?
Well, that's why I said we need to begin the conversation, and we don't need to go far. I mean, it's a global environment we live in. Singapore, I mean, people just beating that to death, but that's a real success story. Singapore, where they got together in the national interest. They don't have natural resources, but today we look at them and so as to determine how can we improve.
But you know, Mr. Nanku, the history of Singapore will tell you that that is not a fair comparison. Even though it's a small nation that was cut loose by Malaysia, they were basically run as a benevolent dictatorship by Lee Kuan Yew, in the sense that the freedoms that we enjoy, that we could stand up here and quarrel with the Prime Minister and call him all sorts of things and say the President is a glorified rubber stamp. You get locked up for that in Singapore.
Yes.
If more than 4 people assemble in Singapore, police come to ask you a question. So I understand the point that you're making about the comparison. But given the freedoms that we enjoy in Trinidad and Tobago, is that a fair comparison?
Well, Fazil, to be quite honest, and this is Kester Nanku personally, not the ECA, I think we need, in order for us to get...
Do we want to become a Singapore in that sense?
No. But Fazil, we need to step back and ask each individual. Is about taking individual responsibility and and be willing to be held accountable. We need to ask ourselves, how have I contributed to the condition or the particular set of circumstances in which we currently operate? And answer ourselves honestly. Maybe that's a gateway or pathway to help us to realistic. It's holding up the proverbial mirror. But how many of us are willing to do that?
All right. I want to make a point here too, Fazil. You know, companies, business, we have boards that we report to, okay? And we have set KPIs at the beginning
Key performance indicators.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if we don't achieve those, we have to explain why, or you know what?
Yes.
We have the ultimate. Government upon government, they set their KPIs with their manifestos. But what happens? Who holds them to account, right? The politics comes and it just throws everything off. I mean, that last local government election is a case in point. I mean, not...
Well, you know, Mr. Ali,
you know,
I mean, I don't want to really...
Yeah.
The government has only one KPI. That's called 26 seats to win an election.
Yeah.
That's the only KPI they're interested in.
But you know, and that's where it resides here in the culture of the people. As we know, you know, productivity and competitiveness is a state of mind, is an attitude. Okay? We have to find a way, and if it is back through that tripartite organization, to get this to grow onto people. Because, sure, we can't be a Singapore, but I'll tell you what we could be. We could be something in terms of some of the successes they have had, because we have so far many more natural resources.
Absolutely, and because time is running out of time, this is a discussion that we have to continue at another time, gentlemen.
Yes.
Mr. Nanku, what would be your final statement in relation to this? Because we keep saying we can't go on like this. We need to do something different. But we don't do it. We never do it. What needs? Do we need to slip even further? Do we need to have more retrenchment? Do we need to have more social unrest, or social unrest for that matter, for something to trigger us in realizing that we need to wake up? Well, what is your own sense of where we are right now, as your final thought?
Well, where we are right now, Fazir, I think no one has to tell us or to remind us about the slippery slope. But you know what? We have an opportunity, the best opportunity, to take ownership and responsibility as individuals in our society, to move away rather than continuing to create a vicious circle, to create one that is virtuous. How do we do that? By demonstrating, and it comes from the home, It comes from the home. You know, we operate now children making children and that kind of challenge and so on, and the indiscipline and so on. We need to do some more work in terms of what we teach and how we teach. We need to get into the hearts and minds. It may sound idealistic, but that's the reality. Parents got to take responsibility for their children.
You realize you're talking about social transformations.
Of course, of course.
And
that goes to the heart of, so to answer your question, we need to begin to transform socially before we can begin, because that is going to impact attitudes.
And this is the final thought.
And mindset.
You are satisfied that employers in the mean, there will always be exceptions, employers in the mean are willing to play their part?
Of course they are. Because I tell you, as Farzan has been saying, the ECA, we help, our raison d'etre is to help organizations, employers, to manage their human capital risk in all forms. And we do a lot of work in that regard.
Gentlemen, thanks very much. You wanted to say something very quickly,
yes.
finally?
CSR, corporate social
responsibility,
responsibility, is becoming critical in the world of business. And that's the vehicle that we must use to bridge this gap and to build this country for zero.
All right.
That's
well, let's see how it goes, because we've heard this before. But for decades, something like diversification, we seem to be a country that is chasing its tail year after year. But anyway, thank you very much, gentlemen, for being on time this morning with our first working day of the new year to have this discussion with us. We'll take a break and continue right after that.
It is just a pity we must